Welcome to the show, Zach. I'm looking
Hey,
forward to chopping it up with you today. I usually start by asking you to introduce yourself, explain your background, and how you ended up to where you are at this point in time.
Thanks, Leighton. I'm glad to be here talking with you guys today. Yeah, so how I ended up here, I guess. Man, I'll just start at the very beginning of everything. I was born in California in the Bay Area, what is now Silicon Valley. I kind of left there a little, like just as the Silicon Valley boom hit, and went to UC San Diego for my undergrad in microbiology. I worked for a couple years at a molecular diagnostic company, and then decided I wanted to go to grad school. And I went to the Colorado School of Mines in Golden, Colorado, and ended up doing a PhD there in environmental science and engineering. And I guess during my PhD, my primary research was water treatment and understanding kind of the microbiology of wetlands water treatment to remove certain pollutants, nitrogen, pharmaceuticals, whatever, and trying to understand from an engineering point of view, how can we optimize or kind of leverage these diverse communities to do whatever we want them to do, kind of from like a ground up point of view, like what levers can we pull to manipulate the community to remove nitrogen faster or break down pollutants better. And at some point, actually about 2014 in grad school, I was kind of researching nutrient limitations, because in water treatment processes, sometimes we try and capture nutrients like phosphorus and nitrogen and reuse them. And I ended up reading about Cuba, actually, that has like one of the largest urban agriculture movements, largely because when the USSR fell and Russia embargoed them, they were kind of forced to drop conventional agriculture. And what I saw them doing was composting, and not like just because they thought it was fun, but because they actually needed to do it to survive. They're an island country without any natural resources, and so they were using worms to basically grow their food. And so that's kind of what got me interested in vermicomposting. At that point in time, I didn't really understand it that well, but I started vermicomposting myself. I was getting involved in a community garden and starting to grow some food myself. And so I started vermicomposting, and I met this guy in Denver who ran a vermicompost operation. I just wanted to buy some worms for him to start my own vermicomposting bin. And so I ran some samples for him for DNA sequencing. He had some bokashi stuff going on, and some vermicompost. And kind of, just with a few samples, what I was able to show was bokashi was just all lactobacillus. Like, it wasn't this magic mixture of microorganisms like it was purported to be, at least back in the day. But then what I saw with vermicompost was just this crazy diversity of organisms, and it's like really blown away. Like, what is all this stuff? What's it doing here? But that's not really what I was getting paid to do in grad school. So I kind of just did a little analysis and sent it to Victor, and but as time went on, I couldn't really get that out of my head. And at the same time, if you look at any water use charts in the U.S., especially the Western U.S. where I'm at, basically like 80 to 90% of all water in the West is used for agriculture, and about 10% of water is used for urban areas. And so I was studying urban water treatment for a good 7 years, and kind of at the end of my PhD, I was like, what am I doing looking at 10% of the problem, when there's this 70 to or 80 to 90%, problem, which is agriculture in terms of water use, like that seemed to be like a much bigger problem that needed to be addressed. And so that kind of got me interested in agriculture. Um, and then so we look at the main problem with agriculture is the use of these chemical fertilizers and pesticides and causing all this water pollution. And so it seemed like if we were going to get away from that, there had to be some kind of biological solution, right? And so I attended the NC State Vermicompost conference in 2019, and I had, after I did my PhD, did a little bit of a postdoc, and wrote this grant to study the microbial ecology of vermicompost using DNA sequencing. That was kind of my expertise in grad school, or a large part of what I learned. So I basically went to this NC State Vermicompost conference and said, Rhonda Sherman, who runs the conference, gave me 15 minutes to speak. And I told her that I wanted to recruit people, vermicompost producers, for this grant, because it was kind of this community science project was the pitch of the grant, where I would sequence everyone's vermicompost and try and, understand if this technology was useful for understanding the microbiology of vermicompost. When DNA sequencing kind of first became a thing, and around 2010, maybe, it kind of started becoming more mainstream. The technology's only been around since 2008. And at the time when it first came out, like the thought of sequencing compost samples, people thought it would be too diverse, too heterogeneous. Like, would you really be able to capture everything? How would you know like what everything's doing? And probably at the time when this technology first came out, it was too difficult of a sample to analyze and understand. But things have come a long way, and 10 years since then, the field's totally transformed. And even now, since I did that project, it just keeps on progressing at a very fast rate. But yeah, so that was kind of the goal of this project, was, like, can this technology be useful for compost producers and understanding the microbiology of their sample? Can we use it to maybe help them market their sample better? And then kind of the big goal of it was, can we understand how to engineer these communities to do what we want them to do? Can we engineer them to have more of the type of organisms that are plant growth promoting organisms, let's say? And I don't think I accomplished that final goal. There was just such a huge amount of variables in how people vermicompost and what they vermicompost. And as I mentioned, this project started in 2020, which is right when COVID hit. And my first kid was born, Vera. She's almost 4 years old now. So this kind of small what was supposed to be a year-long project turned into about a 2-year-long project that was just extremely challenging, because I lost lab space and my timeline got screwed up, and all of a sudden I have this little child that I need to take care of and try and do research all at the same time. It just was quite challenging to pull everything together. So yeah, that funding kind of concluded in 2022, and I thought it was pretty beneficial for everyone despite the challenges. Like, we could see some potential plant growth promoting organisms, let's say. We could kind of start identifying them, but I still was overall somewhat disappointed in the result. There was just so many questions that still needed to be answered. So I decided to start this company, Agrigo Data, basically just to try and continue doing more of these research and education grants. I really enjoy kind of interacting with people that way. I don't have to take their hard-earned money to do research for them. So it was kind of like a way for me to do consulting work, work with people with grants, or also I'm trying to kind of launch a compost analysis for beneficial organisms now too. It's not quite there yet. So that started around 2022, and I wrote a couple more grants, again, mostly at night while I wasn't trying to raise my children, and they didn't get funded, which was kind of a bummer. So I kind of almost gave up, but I reached out to this professor at Colorado State University. I live in Fort Collins, Colorado right now, and so that's my local university. And there's a couple professors there who do plant microbiome interactions, and one of them is Pankaj Trivedi. And I reached out to him, and I kind of told him my story, and basically, hey, I'm just looking for some lab space to do some work, and basically just DNA extractions and maybe a little sequencing. And so he's like, oh, sure, just come into my lab. We'll give you like whatever you need. Basically, super nice guy. Really blew me away with his generosity. So I started going into his lab, doing some preliminary work, like fine tuning everything, like sample collection, and just making sure everything worked well. Doing this DNA sequencing is not that simple of a process, and there are a lot of different biases and these little things that can impact your analysis. So the most important thing is to be consistent in what you do. Like every type of analysis has its own bias, right? But as long as you're just doing everything the same way, you can kind of mitigate that. So anyways, so